My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today we're fortunate to have as our guest Dr. Michael Ben-Eli. Dr. Ben-Eli is the founder of the Sustainability Laboratory, a groundbreaking initiative that addresses urgent sustainability issues facing the planet. During the program, we'll be finding out why and how the Sustainability Laboratory came about, how it's grown and developed. We'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour of some of its projects, and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate its overall mission, conceptual framework, approach, and the positive impact its efforts are making throughout the world. Let's start by meeting Dr. Ben-Eli and finding out all about the Sustainability Project Laboratory. Welcome, Dr. Ben-Eli. Delighted to be able to be here. It's been fascinating to read about the Sustainability Laboratory and what you've accomplished over a relatively short time now, and we're going to see some of those efforts in full bloom, so to speak, shortly.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'll be very happy to tell you as much as we can in this short time.
Before we jump to a wonderful selection of images that you've put together for us, I think it would be of interest to just briefly hear a little bit about your background and how this led to your current work.
Well, I grew up in Israel, where I was born, and left in my early 20s, I was 20 years old, to study architecture in England. And that's at the AA, that's where I met, incidentally, Buckminster Fuller, who had a huge impact on the rest of my career time trajectory, if you like.
Yes.
And so after graduating there, and because of the work with him, I realized that I'll not end up in architecture in the conventional sense of it. And I got very interested in what was beginning to become very powerful in those days, the general system theory and cybernetics. And I felt that in these arenas, a new epistemology was developed to deal with complexity, complex issues, like Fuller was talking about, how to make the world work.
Yes.
And so while working with him here in the United States, I was commuting to London to take a doctorate in cybernetics with Gordon Pask, a leading British cybernetician. And since then, continued doing. When I finished that, there was still not a lot of work in this sustainability area. I mean, the term did not exist even at the time. So for many years, I did work as a management consultant, dealing with issues of change, managing change processes, strategy development, organization, architecture, if you like. And then by the 80s, I found myself increasingly involved with a project that brought all the Fuller elements that required a system integration, that required dealing with issues of population and resources and so forth. And that led slowly to the concept of the lab.
Well, let's pick that up. Speaking of the systems orientation, this image does a wonderful example of an overview of what the Sustainability Laboratory's mission is. Could you share what we're seeing here?
Well, the first is to say that there's actually a very simple concept behind the lab, perhaps childish in a sense, and that is after working for many years with the large multilateral development agencies, the World Bank and others, I became really concerned about the huge gap between the rhetoric of sustainable development was actually happening on the ground. The change of the pace of change was not really exciting enough. And I realized that what was happening there was actually very interesting, that the kind of issues, the kind of challenges that are related to the transition that is required on the planet are entirely unprecedented. There are no experts. No one knows how to manage the planet harmoniously, peacefully, and abundantly with about 10 billion people, with the resources that we have and so forth. So there's no cookbook, there's no recipe book that you can follow. And that meant to me that if that doesn't exist, you have to experiment. And most of those organizations that I was involved with was simply not set up for radical experimentation, which is what is needed. if you want to develop a good career at the World Bank, you cannot make too many mistakes, so you can't experiment freely. And that's where the idea is saying, where do you experiment? You experiment in the lab. And what does the planet need now is a global laboratory for sustainability innovations. And no one else is doing it. Why not do it? So it was a very Don Quixotic, if you like, enterprise. And nevertheless, we launched it. And I think that what is unique about the approach that we take is really kind of expressed in the slide, the image that you have now. The approach is unique, and it combined three major elements. One is the system thinking, the system view of the world, a system-based design approach, if you will. The design approach itself, that focus on design, is tremendously important because it says we're not interested in solving problems. We are interested in projecting images of something you want to design for. So what is it that you want to achieve? Then you track back to what are the conditions that you need to put together in order to achieve it. Again, the system view, integrating as many dimensions as are necessary. The other conceptual kind of underpinning is a interesting concept about evolutionary processes and the theory of change that in particular makes a distinction between two types of change, like change that occurs within the system, where the system still stays the same, or change where the system itself is transformed. And that's a second order change, and that's what we obviously need to bring about in almost every aspect of human affairs on the planet. And then the third element is a definition of sustainability and a set of 5 sustainability principles, if you like. This is very, very important because the prevailing definition is very different, which is cross-generational, is very different to operationalize.
Well, let me bring that up, the image that speaks to your approach, thoughts about sustainability. If you could quickly summarize.
Yeah, when you think about it deeply, you realize right away that the concept has to do with a particular kind of equilibrium, dynamic equilibrium, in the interaction of a population and a carrying capacity of its environment. It can be any population, any environment. It can be amoeba in a petri dish, or lions in the savannah, or humans on the planet. And it's that equilibrium that is absolutely essential. So the definition that we offer is that sustainability pertains to that particular kind of dynamic equilibrium in the interaction of a population and the carrying capacity of its environment, in a way that allows the population to develop, to express its full potential. You don't put any limitation there, other than in compromising the integrity and the capacity of the carrying capacity on which it depends.
You know, you mentioned deep change, and this image here is sort of a preview of what we're going to develop over the rest of the program. Could you just highlight what we're seeing here?
You know, as I said, the lab is interested in doing projects that demonstrates a second order change, if you like. And this slide is a very good illustration of that, because the duck swimming in that little pond would have been entirely inconceivable 8 years ago, where the place looked like the picture on the right. And today it looks like the picture in the top. And that was a transformation that occurred within 4 years.
Remarkable.
And it's really taking a piece of something and turning it into something else.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned integrated approach. This image gives a sense that the project has so many different features that make it attractive, I think, to clients who are participating.
Well, what the lab has done over the years, it's set up as a research, development, and education entity. So we have a development project that we're involved with people, with technology, with location, and so forth. We have educational program that are very exciting that we'll talk perhaps a little down the line a little bit more. And the idea for the lab was twofold, was to develop a portfolio of showcase demonstration project that could then be taken and scaled up perhaps by someone else over time. So a portfolio of project, the demonstration, and to develop the lab as a network of R&D and education centers around the world that map onto particular ecozones, like deserts, mountains, etc.
And the one that you're quite involved with speaks to the importance of getting the local community, in this case the Bedouins, to be a major part of the initiative.
So this is the first center of activity that we set up, was in the desert Negev in Israel, in collaboration with some of the local academic and technology people and so on. So this is the arid zone activity of the lab, and we set up this activity with the local Bedouin population.
Yeah, and we're going to go through a series here to speak about the impact in the number of different dimensions that the project, the initiative has been having.
There are very many really excellent projects around the world today that come under the sustainability umbrella. But if you look at them closely, you'll find out that most, if not all, are either sector or issue specific. So there are projects about energy, or projects about water, or projects about community, or projects about women, or project, and the whole notion that is behind the approach of the lab, you have to integrate all of those in every single effort. So in a sense, that project in the Negev is a microcosm of the planet. It's a tiny, insignificant place, and it's a small project in relation to many others. But the approach there has been, how can you incorporate in one effort and under one strategy all the dimensions that are critical, and to innovate in each one of them.
And I think
so the first one is the social, if you like, the community dimension, where we produce some really radical innovation with relation to that community. We're insisting that the project team will comprise of many people from many different tribes, not one tribe, one family, one village, just across sector, across the thing. The project is organized as a cooperative, which is a new venture kind of way to approach in relation to the governance, the traditional governance of the Bedouin community. I think we said we want women. This was entirely unprecedented. We want women to be part of the team and work together with men. This is really, you can't even emphasize how 10 years ago that was
unheard of.
And today the project team has about 40 people, half of them are women, and a year ago we appointed a young Bedouin woman as a CEO of this woman, and she's doing extremely beautifully. So this was one dimension, so to speak.
And then moving on to see another segment of this initiative, the economic opportunity.
The economic opportunity is another very thing important. We said we are not interested in job creation, which is the low-level approach to dealing with marginal community. We want to try and develop the capacity there and try and develop a group of entrepreneurs that launch their own businesses and run them and own them and benefit from and rise and fall with them. So we have a number of activities there. We have a beautiful dairy operation for excellent dairy product, different cheese, yogurts, things like this. More important, we have a fascinating the desert is home to a large number of very potent medicinal plants that have been used by Bedouin healers for centuries. And this was the healthcare system. There was no hospitals where they were roaming. So we are working with some of the healers. You see here Ali Al-Hawashi on the little corner, who is a local sheikh and a healer who devoted his life to the Bedouin knowledge. So we are trying to actually preserve that knowledge. We spent years experimenting with domesticating those wild plants so that we can grow them in under irrigation in a large thing without losing the potency and create a whole range of health-related products which are doing very nicely.
And speaking of the environment, the green technologies that you've incorporated, if you could just share that.
The whole operation, which is basically an experimental farm, if you like, in a way, is supported by an integrated infrastructure of green technology. So we tried to connect all the functions such that the waste output of one is the raw material, if you like, for another. A very interesting kind of reconstructed wetlands for dealing with grey water. And at the center, we are working on it right now. I don't think it should come in by the end of this year. Is a hybrid approach to hybrid system, wind, solar, and storage for energy that should really support much of the work that we've done there.
And then another piece that you've mentioned and that's had a tremendous impact and has drawn a lot of attention from throughout the world is the education feature.
In addition to all this farming operation, we developed a visitor center there that has a triple function, if you like. It serves as an ecotourism destination, and we see more and more visits.
Sure.
It serves as a source of technical support to outlying villages in how to raise animals better, how to do better agriculture, those kind of things. And it emerged as a very important regional educational centers. We have now about 1,200 high school students every week.
Wow.
Coming there. We have programs for kindergarten kids.
Oh, that's
and
incredible.
Programs for teachers, actually teaching them all about the sustainability principles and environmental issues and those kind of things. So it's at the moment it's that center is extremely active.
Such a robust initiative that you've put together, and it just keeps growing and growing, and I know you're expanding it in other dimensions as well. But this I find very striking because here you can actually see some very noticeable improvements with the restored communities.
Well, this relates back to the picture of the duck in the beginning.
Exactly.
And this is where again, a very dramatic demonstration of second order change. The site that we got, which is about 100 acres, 400 dunams, I don't know what's the term that is best to use here, is basically, when we got it in 2000, and the whole area was basically a moonscape. There was nothing there. It's an area, it's a really desert. It's, interestingly enough, in that part of the Negev desert, this is man-made. This is not natural desert like you see further south. But this is an area that used to be very fertile. And 2,000 years ago, in Byzantic time, it was many, many farms there. And in fact, they used to import wheat to Rome from here. But hundreds of years of mismanagement by overgrazing and monoculturing depleted the soil from any organic matter.
As we can see here.
What we can see here, it's completely infertile. And it has another disturbing capacity. It's called less, that soil. That when it rains, the little rains, we get there about 120 millimeters a year. When it rains, the top hardens like concrete. So the water doesn't seep into the ground, but creates this pattern of erosions, of little ravines feeding into larger ravines and so forth. That's why you get this very actually violent phenomena in that area where you get rains in one place, but when no water stays there. And then you get sudden floods 20 or 30 miles away of that water that flowed through the watershed there. So this was the typical way the site looks years ago.
And these next few just illustrate the progress over the time that you've been able to accomplish. So this photo is, what time period are we seeing here?
This is taken in 2017. We started, the approach that we took there, and it's really led by a young scientist from the Stefan Liu and his colleagues who are involved with the Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. The idea that we took there was to reintroduce or kind of enhance the quality of the soil by massive planting, so that the leaves that fall and so forth reintroduce the carbon to the ground. And by creating a series of multiple low-impact, low-earth mounds to capture the runoff. This is basically ancient Nabatean technology. So those mounds actually keep the water, and in the winter, when it rains, we get huge little lakes, so to speak, rather than huge little lakes, little ponds there, which is where you saw the duck in the beginning.
Right.
So the trees, we probably moved about 5,000 trees that we planted there. And within a period of, we grew those for 5 years in greenhouses. We started with very little seedlings, and then they grew up. When they're big enough, we moved them to the site. And this is how it looked about 2.5, 3 years later. It's
And
the
this
same
is-
site that you saw before.
Yes, and this
And
is a little more
from
recent.
earlier this year, and now our goats and sheep can move around. Now, I have to emphasize that the picture that you saw before is without any intervention other than planting the trees. No seeding and no chemicals, nothing.
Wow.
Just nature doing itself. In the other areas that you see with the animal, these are fields that are under irrigation. And we seed this thing, so we have really healthy food for the animals, and they can go out
And this
and so on.
next one, last week, you've just brought this back from
Yeah.
the area.
And
Wow.
the next picture really shows you how it looks a week ago, kind of thing. The spring has been very good. There's been quite a bit of rain. And again, to emphasize, nothing has been seeded here. Now, the other thing that more to say about this, because this is a very important aspect of the project. Here we were able to demonstrate a very effective, low-cost approach to reversing desertification with no artificial means.
Yeah.
The sequence that happened there was quite amazing. Once the tree took hold, they provide protection, nutrition, and moisture. So seeds that are flying in the air are protected from ultraviolet radiation. They have a place to germinate. So within a year after the planting, suddenly the place was full of flowers and grasses and so forth that grew, as you see here. And we also wanted to have an impact on the biodiversity. This is a site that may have had a couple of scorpions or an occasional raven if there was a dead animal. Nothing, no life. And I thought that will take like 15 years or so. But once the flowers started, all the cross-pollinating bugs appeared, and with them birds. So today, on this site that had nothing, we identified 55 different species of birds. Many
What an
nest on the
impact.
site. Many are birds that migrate from Europe to Africa and back, and they stop there to rejuvenate and so forth. We've got rabbits now. We've got everything. I mean, and with life like rabbits now, predators come. So there are foxes as well who have a little den there. So the place is really full of life now. Human and all the children from the school and all these animals and the birds are flying around. It has to be experienced too.
Most definitely.
appreciate
Well,
it.
speaking of life, there are lots of visitors that
So
you're
that's
attracted
obviously
to.
the project captured the imagination of people from around the world, and we have a large number of visitors from everywhere. Every week, I think we have about 1,000 visitors a month now. So this has become a major operation in its own right, part of the ecotourism program, if you like.
And
in
speaking
addition-
of the education, you have these fellows now.
Right, we started, this is 4 years ago, we launched a graduate level education program that we call the Global Sustainability Fellows Program. We launched the first session in Costa Rica, the first and second sessions in Costa Rica. These are summer sessions, about 3 weeks. And the idea is to take people of all disciplines who are interested to get a deeper understanding, a deeper exposure to issues of sustainability and so forth, and they come to that.
And these next few are going to show the work you've been doing in Costa
So
Rica.
this is the fellows working in a local farm to really know the people there and how they live. And they then worked with the local community that you can, it's a very interesting story actually. This is a community called Martina Bustos near Liberia, the town of Liberia on the Pacific coast. The community is a group of Nicaraguan refugees who are illegal, if you like, squatters in some ways. And it's a community that is abject poverty, really the worst condition I've seen ever. And in addition to that, no legal rights. So we started to work with that community. The fellows came back the second year, and here you see they're starting to work with that group to redesign their future. And we kind of launched a project calling Project Transition, Proyecto Transición. Here you have the fellows with the leadership of that community. And we hope to actually really start that activity now officially. The next picture will show you a meeting with the local government. The office of the vice president of the country has announced this as a project of national priority, and we are just beginning to put the pieces in place to move it forward.
It's fabulous.
And the next, the last summer, this is we had the Global Fellows program. We did it in a very remote area in the desert in Israel, and we had about 17 kids that you can see here from 15 countries.
Yeah.
That was very exciting, really very exciting summer for everybody. And they are now beginning to work on organizing the future connection between the alumni of this program and the lab and how it will work and so on.
And now you have a yearly prize.
Yeah, this is another program that we started. Actually, this now is the 10th year, together with Earth University in Costa Rica, where the graduation project on a entrepreneurial track that they have, the graduation project that actually has to be enacted. It's not a conceptual idea.
Nice.
Which best demonstrates the application of the lab's sustainability principles, get that prize. And the prize is significant. So we have two very generous donors who are supporting that. We have a prize for $10,000 for the winning project. And I'm happy to say that most of the students took, you can imagine that for Central America, this is a kid in Central America, this is a significant amount, but they were,
very substantial.
Most of them really put these resources into developing further those projects.
You know,
and we hope to develop a program like this in many other places around.
You know, you've created so many things in, as I said, such a short period of time. What's your vision for the immediate and upcoming future?
Well, you know, one of the things that is amazing, even when I look at it in retrospect, that we have been able to leverage resources, but with very, very little resources ourselves, in terms of funds and people and so on. So again, the way I see it in retrospect, as I said, is the last 10 years since we started has been a proof of concept, if you like. And I think that in these years we demonstrated that the concept is sound, and that it can have a significant impact, then it's worthwhile. So now the question is where to take it next. And I think that if you take a 5 years view, so to speak, I'd like to see 5 such centers in different ecosystems. So we'll have the dryland, we'll have the humid and dry tropics. It would be great to establish something in islands ecology, perhaps in the Galapagos, in mountains ecology, perhaps in Bhutan. Certainly having something to do with urban ecology, which is so important. So 5 such centers, let's say, with each having 1 or 2 projects at the scale of Wadi Atir. Wadi Atir today is about a $15 million operation, so it's a significant project in its own right. So having that in place, having the Global Sustainability Fellow Program on a sound basis with a constant faculty, and having it every year without having to run after resources for that. I think there's some research project that we can do on global issues which will be very interesting.
Unfortunately, we have to stop there. There's so much you could offer, and congratulations on what you've accomplished over time, and definitely looking forward to following your trailblazing work in the future.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It was really great to have it.
Such a learning experience, and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.